Today's card of the day is Gemstone Caverns. It's a legendary land with, if Gemstone Caverns is in your opening hand and you're not the starting player, you may begin the game with Gemstone Caverns on the battlefield with a counter on it nonetheless. If you do, exile a card from your hand. Tap add colorless. If Gemstone Caverns has any luck counter on it, instead add a mana of any color. This card is really sweet and it's definitely a card I'm willing to pick up. I think the strength of this card comes where essentially if you're not first and there's about a 1 in 4 chance that you are first. So odds are on your side that you're not going to be first. This a lot of times can act like a Mox, except it's also a land. And one thing I noticed since I started playing Mox, I've lowered my commander mana value, and now I can play things like Mox Amber. And having your commander out super early feels so good. Like, especially when you're playing against blue players, which I will say, kind of rough sometimes. Being able to have that sit on the battlefield and accrue value, assuming you have a value-oriented commander, and not have it get countered because it's already on the battlefield, it feels so good. It feels so good when they're like keeping their blue mana up. It's like, why do you got 3 blue open, right? And having this to play your 2 mana, or even if you have more moxes, like up to perhaps even 4 mana card out for on the battlefield first thing, it's really good. And I would go far to say like this is probably an auto-clued in most decks. Like unless you're playing like some weird super low CMC card that can't really accrue value, then it's probably not going to be. I mean, like I'm thinking cards like Rice the Redeemed, but even in that sense, it's like this card is a card that lets you get Rice out a turn early perhaps, but he's also 1 mana, so it's like maybe he's not coming out too early. I'm thinking more so of commanders that are super high CMC, like maybe like a Urza or something like that, because in those cases you can play like Urza, a Mox, then a land on your first turn if you're not going first, and that's like 3 mana already. You know what's coming up at 3 mana? Aristic Study. Aristic Study at 3 mana, turn 1. Yes, please. And no one's paying for that. Like that's one of the reasons why something like a Mystic Remora is really good. Is because 4 mana and people are playing a bunch of their non-creature spells out because usually these commander games tend to be more non-creature heavy. It's so strong. It's guaranteed value at that point. And this just goes to show like the amount of value given through this card in a single game is just a lot. It's a lot. Lands tap for a lot of mana over the game. And I would actually tell you guys to check how much your mana is tapping for over the course of a game. You'll be super surprised how much mana like a land is giving you compared to like a rock or something like that. I know rocks get blown up, so like they're generally not going to produce as much mana as much as a land would, and so this is just like more the reason to run this over like anything else. And also the good thing about this too is it's not as specific as a rock, where like rocks like the moxes, they require you to exile a particular card, like Mox Diamond's like a land, and the other ones are like a non artifact, stuff like that, right? This just asks you to exile a card from your hand. It doesn't care what kind of card. So it's very generic in its application, which I think is a reason to run it in almost all your decks if you can, which is one reason why I'm so excited for this card to come out. It needs to come out. I need to get a copy or two, because this is definitely a card I want to put in most of my decks. It's really, I don't see a real reason to not run it. It's definitely like one of those mana crypt cards. You run it if you can. If you can't, well, I guess you're going to be left in the dust, kind of, which is interesting too to see, because with this remaster being printed out, it's like more people are going to be able to get their hands on this, and then more games are going to become faster because just the ability to get this card physically is just going to be it's going to be there. Like more people are going to be able to do that, so that'll be cool to see. Competitiveness is going to be a little higher because of this card, which is fine. And that's pretty much all I'd say about it. Like this card is going to be it's going to see it in a lot of decks. It's a land that gets you, it's essentially mana ramp if you're not going first, which I think is pretty nice. And it doesn't even require you to have like a juicy sort of relatively filtered out hand where like you need a mulligan. Like I think if you get this with a mole, I think you're pretty happy. Like this is you'd consider ramp. You don't consider this like a land. You'd consider it like a ramp card. But maybe in some cases you would just consider it a land if you have like a 1 lander in hand. But even in that case, it's like, I don't know. It's a really good card. It's a really good card. But that's basically about the card. It's just one of those cards that you should probably an auto-include. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, eventually to see this card being banned because it's just available everywhere. And like if you're playing Commander, you probably want to run this. It's kind of like Library of Alexandria, where it's like if you have 7 cards in hand, you draw a card. It's kind of like that. Like it's just ubiquitously good. But of course, tell me what you guys think about this. Comment down below. Is it just generally good, or is it just me? I think it's just generally good everywhere. I can't see a situation where it's bad besides like having a super like a zero like maybe Rograk doesn't want this. Like, can you afford to run this card? It even taps for color if you're not running like if you run it correctly and that like you're not first and you have this in your opening end. It's just so good. It's so good. Anyways, yeah, peace out guys and catch you later.